Leg 2 to Cape Town, a position that they only secured in the last few miles. Team Malizia slipped into 4th after failing to hold their lead on the last leg. Boris Herman and the rest of the crew will be eyeing up the double points available for a good performance now, as will GUYOT Environment Team Europe, currently in 5th place. Robert Stanjek and Benjamin Dutroux know that a good result on this leg would get them right back into the mix. Well, the first challenge that they're going to have on leg 3 is going to be the tight inshore course D. We are going to be tucked into the shore here on Table Bay. How does the course, the initial test, lay out for them?
Well, it's a hard transition from this inshore course that we're going to face. Similar to the import day that we saw a couple of days ago, they're going to be leaving in Table Bay, doing a series of squares, multiple corners to turn. They're going to set off through the start line, they're going to turn around several marks, and they're going to be on this reaching start. They're going to go downwind with a jibe, reach back, and they've got to do this lap twice. After that, then they get the glory of being able to go through a departure gate, and then it's off into the Southern Ocean and what lies ahead. And that's going to be some pretty tough negotiating and navigating involved.
It's going to be incredible, isn't it? We're going to be following them for, well, pretty much as long as we can here through the twists and turns of this import section, where the breeze is fierce, and it's only going to get worse for them. It's only going to be bigger and wavier and harder as this race ticks on. You can see there the spectator fleet with the kite surfer, and just in the distance, I think that is 11th Hour Racing Team with a reef. But Team Holcim-PRB is certainly, going into this departure, they've got to be feeling good. But interesting to hear Kevin Escoffier kind of not talking himself down, but refusing to feel overconfident.
Absolutely, it's about having a clean slate. Everything starts from the beginning now. There's so much ahead of them. They're aware that it's mistakes that are costly. But if they can keep their slate clean as they have been doing, I mean, they're just going to go strength to strength. That's the boat everyone's looking at, but I think you mentioned before there's some other boats to look out for in this leg, and it's so long, so much can happen. But the conditions in Table Bay look absolutely fabulous today. There's a real indication of how much wind is out there by the fact that they've got deep reefs in their mains already.
Sam Holcim, I can't hear you.
Or just on board Team Holcim-PRB, you could just hear Kevin Escoffier, the skipper, with Tom Leperche just down at the leeward side, and Abby Ehler on the bow. And that was a sort of a configuration that we saw during the import section of the race, worth having somebody forward on the bow with the audio headset on, being able to talk to the helm, calling themselves into the marks, as you were describing, Dee. The timings, the split-second accuracy, so important. But what about Biotherm here, Dee? I mean, Paul Mayer, very much sort of, with his heart, is a solo sailor in there with the moccasins. He's built a crew around him of very similar skills. Is it possibly a detriment that they're all so solo sailors, not quite kind of team sailors?
It's a really interesting balance here. We can see them getting in. Damien Sagan, Sam Davies, Paul Mayer, all solo sailors. But actually, Sam's been here before. She's led Team SCA a couple of editions ago. So she knows how to get that team ethos. And what Paul wanted to do as a skipper was get people around him that he was comfortable with, that he could trust, so that he could become more relaxed in his role as skipper down there. I think they're going to get the best out of the boat. They've got absolute confidence in each other. But it's interesting dynamic, as you say, that how well the solo sailors communicate with each other so that that information is passed on.
There's also a very interesting thing you can read about the equipment that everyone's wearing. Oh, the 5-minute gun just going, but you can see the difference in equipment that everyone was wearing, whether it was Paul Mayer sticking his head out of the cabin and he had a dry seal wrist because he knows he's going to get the spray, whereas inside, I think it was Damien Sagan who's going to be on the grinding pedestal, shorts and t-shirt. Why wouldn't you? A big difference in what the ride is going to be like depending on where you are for the IMOCA, and of course from boat to boat as well. This boat right now that we're seeing here is the race control boat. This will be one end of the start line, and the 5-minute gun has counted down. We've got 11th Hour Racing Team, Team Malizia and GUYOT Environment Team Europe all milling around the start, getting themselves ready. But let's just focus on 11th Hour Racing Team here. I mean, Charlie Enright, this is his third ocean race, and in terms of a lineup, in terms of a crew, to build around you. I mean, he's got a very strong bunch of sailors with him.
Well, this is like the ultimate rock star crew list. It's unbelievable. Simon Fisher, a winner, a Navigator, has done 5 editions. Jack Boutel, a winner, done 2 previous editions. Justine Mitro, 2 previous editions as well, part of a winning team. So they know what victory looks like. They know what it's meant to do and how it's meant to happen. They've just got to pull it all together now. And they've been training together for a long time. So people have got high expectations for 11th Hour Racing Team.
And training together on that boat as well. So many of these boats have come out of the mould new, but 11th Hour Racing Team, out of the new boats, if you like, GUYOT Environment Team Europe being a very old boat comparatively, but they have been on board with 11th Hour Racing Team a long time. The ergonomics are known. Let's have a little bit of a look on board now and just see if we can pick up any of the audio, the pre-race setup from Charlie Enright and the team. No words, but you can read it in his face. You can see how hard he is concentrating. Right now, 11th Hour Racing Team are sitting to windward of the start line, lined up to charge into the line, along with Team Malizia and GUYOT Environment Team Europe. Biotherm are just ahead of them. Charlie Enright is holding back. At the moment, we are inside of 3 minutes to go, and it's all going to be about when you pull the trigger, when you start your charge towards that line. We do have what looks by my uneducated Imoca eye to be the J2, the bigger jib, furled, ready to go. So it could be that we are ready to get some bigger sails out, and perhaps with these boats we're going to be able to see some different sail configuration. Dee, you know the Imocas better than me. What kind of sails do you think we're going to be seeing here?
Well, I think it's interesting. You can see they're in an area of slightly lighter breeze, but literally halfway along this course, there's a really big pressure line. So let's just hear what they're saying from Benjamin Detroit. They're giving his instructions.
A little bit of a difference between the calmness on board 11th Hour Racing Team, the intensity on board GUYOT Environment Team Europe. But D, we're about a minute 30 away from the line, and you were just saying that the difference in breeze, metre by metre, is quite something.
Really significant, and we're really going to see this. You can see a line on this start line between the blue and white mark on the right hand of your screen and the committee boat on the left hand, and you can see a dark line. That's an increase in pressure. Then they're going to go off on a reach, and I think that wind is going to build. So I think we're either going to see some super quick foiling and possibly some sail changes. As you say, their manoeuvrability with the small J3, but that J2 is there furled, ready to go.
Well, we've got the start line here between the committee boat flying the flags on the left-hand side of your picture and the blue and white conical mark to the right, in the middle of your screen. The boats have got to cross that line, and they cannot cross the line before the countdown reaches 0, otherwise they get a penalty. And look at how close to this line Paul Mayer's Biotherm is. They are so close right now, but not really enough time on the clock to turn around, go away from the line, build up some distance, and then come charging in. They are so much closer than everybody else. All the other boats very much lined up together, and we can expect Paul Mayer to have to pull the trigger on speed late compared to the others. The other teams are going to come here and a charge. Final few seconds to go for the line, and Biotherm very close to the line, but perhaps the others stuck in a light patch. It looks like Biotherm was actually the one boat to get away here. The wind just produced a bubble right where the other teams didn't want to do it. They would have been looking at Paul Mayer and thinking that the Frenchman is crazy to be that close to the line. But it's Biotherm right now, 5-10 seconds after the gun has fired, the only boat to have crossed the line. And D, look at this. I mean, they're all on the wrong jibe for what the breeze should be doing.
Absolutely, but you can see on the water this lovely shot from the helicopter, that light wind area that they've all got themselves stuck in. And Paul Mayat with Biotherm literally positioned himself just behind a little gust that fell perfectly for him for that start time and that crossing of the line on time. They're going to be really happy with that start on the start of a big epic leg.
especially as now they seem to be going into the breeze. They've still got the J3, the smaller of the possible head sails, up, but now they're starting to move. The fact that they're still on that J3, they haven't got the bigger head sail out, means that they know that the breeze ahead of them is going to build. Let's see if we can have a listen on board.
Are you happy with that, Paul?
Ouais, ouais. Un peu de...
Paul, you happy with the start?
Ok, on peut choquer un peu devant. Ok.
I'd never try and talk to a helm when they're in the middle of the race trying to get themselves off the line, but he almost didn't need to answer. Of course he's happy with that start. They are going, they are ripping away, and right now nobody else has crossed the start line. Nobody else has managed to close that distance. They must have been looking at Biotherm with a minute to go thinking Paul Mayer's crazy, and then suddenly realizing that actually it was them that has lost out. The second boat to cross the finish line, a full, minute 22 minutes behind Biotherm is Team Malizia. Boris Herrmann managed to get that boat creeping. They're going to hit into that breeze, and you can see that dark patch coming through now. It's probably worth mentioning at this point, Dee, that the race course area wasn't actually meant to be here today, but due to some whale activity in the bay, it was moved away from the pod of whales, and it's put us underneath Table Mountain. But that's what you've got to roll with. And look at this, Team Holcim-PRB, they are going to be at the back on this start line.
And look at this from Biotherm now, absolutely powering away. But don't forget, they're in this strong pressure now at the other end of the course that the others are struggling to get to. But they've got to do a loop. They've got to go back round through that light patch again. So it is not over yet. It is so much still to go.
So much still to go, so many corners, and that's just this import section. Of course, there's still nearly 13,000 miles that they need to sail all the way to Brazil. So we know that there's breeze out there. It's just in front of these boats, but Team Holcim-PRB and 11th Hour Racing Team are right now in a drag race. Charlie Enright's boat is to windward. Arguably they're going to get the breeze first, and if they can sail, they can turn that power into speed, they might be able to take the breeze out of Kevin Escofia's sails. But Team Holcim-PRB managing to sail forward. It's now GUYOT Environment Team Europe to the left-hand side of your picture, managing to find a little bit of speed. In front of these three boats, we have Team Malizia, and then a long way out is Biotherm as we go on board with Team Holcim-PRB.
Ils n'arrivent pas à battre.
That's not a happy face for Kevin Escoffier on board Team Holcim-PRB, and anybody that knows Kevin Escoffier knows how he sails. A very intense sailor, but look at this. This is the breeze that's waiting for them, and this is probably what was making Kevin Escoffier sad, is because it's not with the Frenchman yet. Team Malizia, Boris Herrmann now absolutely flying. Both foils are out, ready for the tight corners of this racetrack, and they have had to transition from light wind sailing, eking the boat forward, to too much power, ripping the boat away, an enormous bear away for Team Malizia, and they're not at the mark yet. That turn was simply due to a loss of control. They're now turning themselves back up. The transition from light winds to strong winds, forcing Team Malizia to take avoiding action, to take a big course dive just to try and hold on to everything. But you can see the split in the racetrack right now. Biotherm round Mark 1 and onto the slower downwind section, much shorter before that high-speed reach on the way back. Now Team Malizia back on course, going round in second place. D. Handling these Amoccas is one thing, and handling these Amoccas when the breeze goes from 0 to 20 knots in a blink of an eye is something else.
This is almost a stereotype Cape Town offering for a start on a leg. It literally is 0 to everything all in one go and mixing it up. And you probably thought at the beginning, why are they not putting bigger sails out to get through those light winds? Because that is what comes ahead. Look at Holcim flying now. Out of control, they're lifting the bow high in the air. That is not a fast move. And it is a wet ride now for them. That's why the helms are fully dressed, because they are getting drowned, whereas the others are grinding inside, getting hot and sweaty out of the spray. approaching these marks now. They're all in the strong winds and they're all starting to enjoy the sailing, but they know what lies up the other end of the course.
Yeah, the light wind patch that, as you were saying earlier, they will have to sail back through again, and it's 11th Hour Racing Team now round Mark 1. That is third place at the moment for Charlie Enright. GUYOT Environment Team Europe have been forced wide, possibly searching for that breeze in the first part of this reach that started in light winds, and that has opened the door for Team Holcim-PRB to do a tight rounding on the first mark, and now they look set, riding both foils. Look at Kevin Escoffier's team here on the right-hand side. They're riding both foils. They've been able to keep their drag minimum and slip on the inside of 11th Hour Racing Team. That's an incredibly powerful maneuver that Kevin Escoffier has just been able to pull off there. It's not quite going to last the full length of this short downwind leg, and it does mean that Charlie Enright has a chance to still put the jibe in and round the next breeze in front, but the intensity with Kevin Escoffier is there.
We are careful with 11 with the jibe. Okay, do we drop the keel?
Now, timing of this jibe, this is going to be important. Now, 11th Hour Racing Team have jibed, and Team Holcim-PRB also jibed as well on what is proving to be an unbelievably interesting import section of the departure for leg 3 here at Cape Town. Well, 11th Hour Racing Team at the moment still holding the lead over Team Holcim-PRB, but remember, this is actually the battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th. GUYOT Environment Team Europe to the left-hand side, out of our picture, just as we pull back now. They have been forced a very wide track around this racecourse, some of it lacking in breeze, some of it potentially just not wanting to push the manoeuvres too tight. Ahead of this pack is Team Malizia and Biotherm, with Biotherm getting the absolutely phenomenal start. Paul Mayer reading the breeze better than me and better than all the other skippers out on the water. But now, these three boats, 5th for GUYOT Environment Team Europe, 4th for Team Holcim-PRB, 3rd for 11th Hour Racing Team. It looks like 2 reefs in the main and the J3. That is a small sail selection, just an indication of how strong the breeze is right now. And they are coming round the mark that signifies the end of the downwind section and launches them onto the long reach into the light winds. And they're going to have to get ready for that other transition coming up.
That's right. Now the hard thing here is as these boats come round at speed, we'll see if 11th Hour can tell us how that transition's going to look like ahead of them.
Well, 11th Hour Racing Team, was interesting to see the sweat on the shoulder of Simon Fisher, I think, but it's Team Holcim-PRB who had an opportunity to attack the Americans in front, but now needs to defend, because GUYOT Environment Team Europe, if they can get that J3 in, trimmed and pulling, have an opportunity to attack here.
Can you stop your autopilot?
Onboard GUYOT Environment Team Europe as they are chasing down Team Holcim-PRB just to windward. Plenty of breeze, plenty of speed, and if they can just pull on the last of that J3, they would be able to find a little bit more power. Interesting there, they were just talking about the autopilot on board. I wonder whether they'd had a little bit of a problem, and that was why we saw them rounding wide on a lot of those turns.
It sounded like it, because normally in these conditions you don't want that pilot involved. The helm stays there the whole time. But they clearly had the pilot on to do something, and then he needed that disconnected so he could control the boat again as they're grinding. But looking up the track here, it's still Biotherm that have got that huge lead on everybody. But don't forget, these are the ones that are going to hit that light patch near that start area first. So they will slow down and there will be a compression of the fleet.
Yeah, we saw it stretch off the line as Biotherm got the breeze first, and now look at them, they're in that lighter patch, and we know it's only going to get lighter. So Paul Mayer going to have to work very hard here as the wind gets light in Cape Town. Biotherm still in the lead, but the first to hit the light winds near the starting area. They are sailing up to Mark 3. It'll be a left-hand turn before going upwind. Let's have a listen in on board. And behind them, look at the difference here, D. They have still got the breeze. Behind Biotherm, it's Team Malizia, and it was quite a gap, but now 11th Hour Racing Team has closed it down. Second for Boris Herman with Team Malizia on the right-hand side of your screen, and then just behind them, it's Charlie Enright, absolutely charging up here. There's no real way through and past the German boat, but the corner is coming up, and an opportunity here to push even further and perhaps overtake.
Yeah. Okay.
On board with Team Malizia, and it's Will Harris and Rosalind Kuiper working hard on the pumps. Rosalind Kuiper not able to do the import race due to illness, and now the light winds hit. And D, I wonder whether that windward position that 11th Hour Racing Team seemed to dial for at the last second might give them a bit of an advantage.
They definitely wanted that controlling side on the inside of the turn at the next to Mark. They worked hard to get there, and unfortunately Team Malizia got those light winds just before 11th hour, which allowed that gap to close up. So Boris will have been a little bit frustrated with that.
Just coming down. Thank some GD after that when you can? Yeah, absolutely. Some GD, sorry, yeah. Get in, yeah.
Look at what is going on here. There's a little bit of a park up here. This is the compression, D, that you were talking about. We knew that things were going to stretch off the start line as those leaders got into the breeze. Now it's all squeezing together as the boats ahead sail into the light winds. And GUYOT Environment Team Europe to leeward, trying to find a way through, but they're not really going to see much of the breeze down there. But right now it's almost as if the race is restarting. This is an incredibly tricky conditions out in Table Bay here, D.
Oh, just 2 knots there at boat speed. That's so frustrating after they've just been through those crazy conditions. But how good for GUYOT Environment Team Europe to have that compression and that restart. That gets them back in the race. That gives them hope that they can now do something about it. But Biotherm will be so devastated that their hundreds of mile advantage has been lost.
GUYOT Environment Team Europe in 5th place, and it was 5th place by a bit of a margin. It's no longer that case now. We've got Team Holcim-PRB just ahead here to the right-hand side of your picture, and look at those J3s, the small triangle sails, desperately trying to find a little bit more breeze, but it's there. Look up to windward. You can see it, you can barely touch it. But there is a big patch of light winds here for these 2 boats. And just ahead of these 2 boats, 11th Hour Racing Team, Team Malizia and Biotherm are also struggling a little bit as well.
It is classic Cape Town Table Bay conditions with that massive wind shadow giving us those shifts, giving us those acceleration zones. It is so frustrating to be a sailor doing this, but how great for us watching just to see these restarts.
You can see the bubble. I mean, you can absolutely see a razor sharp edge of where there is no breeze. And just coming into view on the camera, you can see what's causing it. The mountains here in Cape Town are absolutely refusing the breeze access to these sails. So Biotherm had, what was it, 600 meters at one point? And right now, Team Malizia is just a boat length behind them. So the positions right now are where we are. It's almost like where we're going to wrap up the first half of the first lap. Biotherm is in first place as we go on board now, and Paul Mayers, well, his expressions might be a little bit different from what we saw in the start.
Non, non, pas devant. Peut-être pas devant, faut surtout. Faut même reborder un petit poil devant si on peut. Ok, là on l'a vraiment. Allez, on vire. Vire.
Paul Mayer desperately trying to find a little bit of breeze, desperately trying to find a little bit of an adjustment on that forward sail. In fact, the breeze now coming over, it's almost a little bit of attack. These seconds here these little meter gains, they are going to make a little bit of a difference here, and it could make all the difference coming around the next mark. Well, a wind shift. I mean, well, no wind, but some wind, and the new wind is coming in on a different direction. This course is almost designed to not have them tacking on this leg, and then sure enough, this is where we find ourselves.
I know, we could just hear Paul speaking then to his team, saying there's no wind, there's new wind, stand by to tack. They're literally standing by for everything. Anything can happen, and they've just got to be ready for this change and be ready to adapt.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 IMOCAs right now with the main sails down to the second reef, the smaller of the head sails, all of them tuned and prepped for the big breeze, which is on Table Bay today, but it's at the other end of the course. That means they have to navigate these light winds with the wrong sail plan. I mean, let's call it. They've all decided that this is the smart move, and it certainly was, because they almost looked out of control there.
But we can see from these images now we've got a different sail on Team Malizia. They actually have made the effort to do that sail change, and everyone else is probably contemplating whether they should be doing the same.
Bit more on the front. Okay.
Moving a bit here. Got a bit of breeze on top of the mountain. We have mark room on them. Hey, Malizia, we do have mark room, okay? No, not now, but it's 3 lights to work.
Not sure we will have any more, Tommy. Put the trim on the front.
He's gonna go below Paul, yeah? Maybe hit the lane high.
Biotherm, they were holding the lead, and it looks like they're still going to hold it. Biotherm, Paul Mayer, barely with any real movement forward, but it is just enough to get them round Mark 3 and start the upwind leg, where there's still more trials waiting for them in the light winds. But look at 11th Hour Racing Team. Dee, as you were saying, they had changed to a slightly different head sail choice, and it seems like that has been able to get them on the inside of Team Malizia potentially. Oh, we've got Mark Towell out on the water at the moment, CEO of 11th Hour Racing Team. And Mark, we have seen quite some incredible racing here. Give us the latest.
Hey guys, yeah, it's an incredible day. Cape Town's putting on quite a show. There's 25 knots down at marks 1 and 2 and nothing down here. The teams are all on 2 reefs and I think preparing for the breeze. What'll be interesting is regardless of who does well in this inshore section, just a quarter mile to the south around Green Point, there's absolutely no wind, so expect another park up on their way out of town.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And interesting here, Dee, to see the difference in tactics. Paul Mayer on Biotherm deciding to tack there.
Well, there's a really clear wind shift, and they're all accommodating that right now.
Well, GUYOT Environment Team Europe finding some breeze, but you can see, I guess, why it was that Biotherm has tacked over, because GUYOT Environment Team Europe very low here. Let's listen in on board.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. Attack. Yes, okay.
Our GUYOT Environment Team Europe tacking now. Benjamin Dutroux on the helm with a lot of the crew underneath, working all those sheets and all the winches. They are still right now in 5th place on the heels of Team Holcim-PRB. I mean, Dee, we had a big compression. It got with half a boat length between the boats, but ultimately no real place changes at the moment. But right now, with Biotherm doing that early tack, it might be that we have a new leader by the time we get up to the top. And there we go, Biotherm there, as you can see from the virtual eye. Biotherm with that early tack, losing out to Team Malizia here.
I see Team Malizia is actually in more pressure. Biotherm actually did a really nice early tack and anticipated that wind shift, but it's Team Malizia that's in more pressure. That is now gone into the lead, which will be so frustrating for Paul Mayer on Biotherm there.
Very frustrating, but of course it was a decision that they took to tack early, and one argument is always, if you're in that tactical advantage of leading, don't split from the feet, you know, wait and see what they're going to do. Now Paul Meyer needs to work hard. Question is, are they going to make it round this mark? And I don't think they are. I think they've still got another tack to do, and in fact it's going to be worse than that. It looks like they're going to have to go all the way round as we go now with Team Malizia in the lead, and this is what Biotherm did off the line, getting into the breeze first, absolutely foiling away and launching themselves into what will be a very healthy lead with both foils in the water. But let's have a look at Biotherm here, because behind Team Malizia leaves that mark. Biotherm did not manage to find a way round that mark. Instead, they have had to turn wide to get that tack in. They didn't have the right to cram in at the last minute, and they have not only given their position to Team Malizia, they've also let 11th Hour Racing Team, and now Team Holcim-PRB in front of them as well. So very quickly the lead unravelled there for Paul Meyer, and I'm going to argue here, Dee, it was all about tacking too early.
Absolutely, that wind shift, and while he thought he had the right side of the wind shift, he missed the pressure. Team Malizia have literally schooled everybody there. Now we've got a coming together of Biotherm and GUYOT, Team Europe there coming together at that mark rounding. GUYOT Environment Team Europe have got the boat speed there. Biotherm are just generally in the way. There's going to be a few crosswords said, I'm sure.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Dee. I'm not sure. We saw Paul Meyer on Biotherm dial out of rounding that mark because he felt like he didn't have the rights to go in. Then he did go in with GUYOT Environment Team Europe, and couldn't quite work out there whether he actually fouled, whether GUYOT Environment Team Europe needed to let him in. So be interesting to see exactly how that situation replays. But right now, for the boats that have already gone round, the drama is long behind them. It's 11th Hour Racing Team round now in second place, up to speed already through the start line again. As we are looking there, they're absolutely ripping along right now. The light winds firmly behind them, and we are seeing speeds of well over 20 knots for 11th Hour Racing Team as they are smashing through the water of Table Bay. Team Malizia just a little way ahead of them, 28 knots on board 11th Hour Racing Team at the moment. They are holding on hard. I think that is Jack Boutel just looking out, trying to cast his eyes forward, trying to see that mark, call the timing in. Team Malizia are ahead of them, but Team Malizia is not going as fast.
So we can get down quicker, okay? So we don't let anyone in.
Plenty of pressure here. Good angle paralleling here. I'll call the fairway, it'll be late. Okay,
So it was Charlie Enright with his head out of the canopy. Jack Boutel still in shorts and t-shirts safely down below. But look at this with Team Malizia. It was Team Malizia that had an enormous lead going around that first mark, stretching out as they got into the breeze. Now 11th Hour Racing Team firmly on their windward hip, and Mark 1 is coming into view. It is just ahead of these two boats. Plenty of power here, but that does make the turn a little bit fraught with danger. Team Malizia at the mark, now turning round. Rosalind Kuiper and Will Harris down below, and that turn just taking them slightly off the power. 11th Hour Racing Team just out of shot to the left-hand side, taking that position on their windward hip. And it looks to be that Charlie Enright is taking 11th Hour Racing Team a little bit higher, wanting to stay in a little bit more pressure, and potentially we could see 11th Hour Racing Team jibing early. I wonder whether they're going to try and steal the inside line again.
Well, they're definitely trying to hold on to that pressure and the slightly faster angle. Team Malizia have committed to that big bear away and that downwind, trying to sail a shorter course, but it may cost them in their boat speed. It's very clear here that 11th Hour Racing Team have got much better boat speed than Team Malizia, but it's all about that jibe into the ley line for that next mark that they go round, while they've still got good pressure and good speed.
And it is absolutely right that the speed is different. 15 knots for 11th Hour Racing Team, just over 10 for Team Malizia. 11th Hour Racing Team, though, sailing more distance to get that speed, sailing high. So if they want to get on the inside of them, they need to jibe and start attacking. Behind them, the battle for 3rd, 4th and 5th is with Team Holcim-PRB and Biotherm. Paul Meyer now finding himself in the pack. But all of our fibre mockers here on Table Bay pushing hard as the breeze is producing some incredible speeds here as the boats start leg 3. Team Holcim-PRB next to round here, Mark 1, as they come round the top of the course. This is our second lap, and look at that with Team Holcim-PRB on both falls. This is what we saw Kevin Escoffier doing, taking the low line. Now it's GUYOT Environment Team Europe, who haven't really been able to turn around any of the marks tightly, and again they hold it wide and high, electing instead to give themselves quite a big buffer room, and we did see boats get their positioning wrong and hook up with marks on the import race, but GUYOT Environment Team Europe certainly giving themselves quite a wide margin for error, as Biotherm is now in 5th place. I mean, Dee, what an incredible first half and last half of the last lap, and this one, Biotherm in the lead by miles and now behind.
Well, Biotherm, hero to 0, but he will be so happy because remember 2 days ago he didn't even get to race. So for him to be racing and competing, he will be happy, and it's, you know, the bigger picture's the Southern Ocean. But if they're starting with this, I'm exhausted watching this, and we haven't even got into the 12,000 miles that lay ahead.
Well, the jibe from Team Holcim-PRB is meaning that GUYOT Environment Team Europe and Biotherm need to guide themselves into what potential attacking position they could find there. Biotherm looks set to be on the inside of GUYOT Environment Team Europe. It looks to be that Paul Mayer wants to have that inside round. And Dee, I mean, it's interesting that you're talking about so many miles to go. And in fact, you know, talking to the sailors, you yourself, as somebody who's been put through many an ocean race import section, oh, it's a procession, you know, there aren't that many place changes. The course certainly is designed for speed, not so much all these tactical decisions. But what have we got here? I mean, this is not what's predicted at all. That is the view from the stern of Team Malizia going round the mark at the bottom of the short downwind section and heading off on that top reach. But look at the head. Look at the 2 boats in the lead here with their speeds of around 25 knots. It's Team Malizia, an 11th hour racing team. An 11th hour racing team look like they have been able to sail past Team Malizia. They need to do more from here because they're to leeward, but if they can keep that position going, keep that speed up and get their breeze out in front of Boris Herman's boat, they might be able to make this work. Meanwhile, at the back, rounding onto that bottom reach, it's Biotherm, the boat that was leading off the start line, now in 4th place with GUYOT Environment Team Europe behind them in 5th. And there's still more power for Paul Mayer here. All he needs to do is pull those sails on, and that boat will accelerate even further. Just the view on board Biotherm there, and Paul Mayer, who's sitting just on the edge of the cockpit, very wet. Sam Davies tucked up inside, looking very dry. But look at this, GUYOT Environment Team Europe, they're attacking. I think the Biotherm have got a problem here. They're not able to trim on their sails, Dee.
Well, I did laugh when you said if they could just pull on their sails, and I was laughing thinking, do you know how hard that is to grind them in as they turn the corner? The guys are working so hard to do that. But I would definitely say if you look at the sail trim now and the boat speed difference, GUYOT Environment Team Europe have it right, and GUYOT's really struggling, Biotherm's really struggling to get their sails trimmed for the course they want to sail to that next mark.
Just got images now of onboard Biotherm and just waiting to see whether we can get a view inside the cockpit to see whether they do indeed have a problem, because GUYOT Environment Team Europe have now rotated to windward. It's the right, it would be right if we could see that boat, but right now Biotherm, if they look over their windward side, they will see the European boat motoring over the top of them. Biotherm now look trimmed, they look up to speed, but that turn has unfortunately exposed a bit of a weakness on board Biotherm, late to get the sails in. Meanwhile, out in the lead, So the
That's what we think we want to do. We just want to check the rules. Over. Okay, we'll have a quick look and come back to you.
So if the drama couldn't come any thicker, any faster, Biotherm here, I mean, Dee, we were just saying it didn't look like everything was going well on Biotherm. Seemed to have a bit of problem with their sails, and we're listening now. Well, the wind over the deck on Biotherm a little bit too rich to hear Paul Mayer, but basically over the VHF we heard what sounded like Sam Davies on the radio to the race control team saying that they had a technical problem on board, and it seemed as if they were going to have to retire and return to Cape Town. That's certainly the way that I heard the news, and it would match up with the fact that when they came round that mark, they were very late putting the power on. And right now, this boat doesn't seem to be sailing the course. They're sailing low and they're sailing out of the breeze. Let's listen in again.
But you will not be able to restart for a minimum of 2 hours. Over.
So just confirming there, what I've just been listening to is that they're going to go into the harbour to check the technical issue, but there has to be a window of 2 hours before they can come out and restart. We obviously will confirm that as we get clarification for this situation that's evolving with Biotherm.
So Team Malizia are absolutely ripping away at the moment in the lead. They've been able to hold off 11th Hour Racing Team, and while we dial into that battle for first place, we will just confirm that it looks like Biotherm are heading into the background. There's a little bit of VHF chat in the background here, and they're going to have to go to shore. We're not too sure what the technical issue is, but it's certainly severe enough that they're going to have to take the 2-hour penalty, and they're still going to have to sail the import section of the course before they can get out into the wild ocean. So Biotherm absolutely looking fantastic when the start gun fired, but right now they are back on the wrong footing, going back to shore to sort out their boat. Meanwhile, out on the racetrack, without the problems that seem to be plaguing Paul Mayer, it is Team Malizia nearly hitting 30 knots of boat speed with an over 200-metre lead from second place, 11th Hour Racing Team. Team Holcim-PRB behind in third place, and then GUYOT Environment Team Europe rounding the last of the marks onto that top reach in fourth. What an unbelievable race we are having here. Team Malizia still looks set to produce even more speed. D, for the sailors that are still in it, the challenge is there. For Biotherm, they're going to have to go back ashore. I mean, this race has only been running for a few moments, and already there's so many stories.
I know, the psychological drama. Let's just see now the lead of Team Malizia, see what's going on, if we can hear anything from them.
Will Harris and Rosalind Kuiper, they are the two sailors on Team Malizia down below, and they have got in their hand the sheets, the foil controls, trying to keep the boat tuned up, and look at what's attacking them on their windward side. It's 11th Hour Racing Team pushing hard as both of these boats are going up to the first mark of the lap. 11th Hour Racing Team happy to take that position to windward. And now Team Malizia getting ready to round just ahead. 11th Hour Racing Team now going to follow them.
On the mark, you got 10 to spare. No lower than that.
So Team Malizia now round onto that slower, short downwind section. 11th Hour Racing Team carrying the speed and seems to be carrying it well. If they can keep the bow up, if they can ride that gust, that distance between first and second will compress. Behind them, Team Holcim-PRB reaching across. They're going to close down the distance because they're going to be able to keep on the speed before they need to turn onto that downwind section. But Team Malizia have been able to hold low and haven't really suffered from speed. We saw on the previous attack, shall we say, D, that 11th Hour Racing Team was able to hold high. But look at this now with GUYOT Environment Team Europe. That's too much heel from my eyes. That's not too fast.
No, that balance between getting the flight and getting the heel, and now we can see them come upright, get on their foils and actually lift off. And it makes a big difference with their boat speed. but they're enjoying that fast reach, whereas the 3 boats in shot here we've got on that downwind section, they've got to do the big manoeuvre of a jibe on the ley line and come round to that next mark. And then we can start to go through that transition from inshore mode to offshore mode. And I think after this exciting start, the sailors are going to be relieved.
They really are. I mean, all except for Biotherm, we should say. Well, unfortunately, got to go all the way back to the beginning, but they will be very relieved, these 4 boats still out on the course right now, that this is nearly coming to an end as 11th Hour Racing Team jibe to follow Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB, who are in 3rd place at the moment, lining up their jibes to follow the two boats. Abby Ehler on the bow, communicating to Kevin Escoffier on the helm of the angles, running into the mark, trying to guide the boat through the waves, trying to find the perfect patch to jibe as we go on board for the turn.
Okay. I know, I can try better.
Kevin Escoffier, his head out of the hatch, one hand on the tiller, guiding the boat round the corner there, and the 2 boats you can see in the distance is Team Malizia and 11th Hour Racing Team. And now it's Boris Herrmann rounding and onto the final reach. This reach will take them through a gate between the 2 marks at the other end of the course, and then they are free, they are off, they are released out into what can only be described as the hardship of the Southern Ocean. So Team Malizia are now round, 11th Hour Racing Team hot on their heels, Team Holcim-PRB in 3rd place. But with now the speed starting to match. And look at GUYOT Environment, Team Europe, 25 knots for Robert Stanczyk and Benjamin Dutroux on that top reach, as we see Biotherm in the background sailing back into the harbour. This is 1, 2 and 3 now round the bottom of the course. 11th Hour Racing Team onto that bottom reach. I mean, Dee, it's interesting that there is so much of the sails flapping. That top section of the forward sail is flapping. They could pull it on and go faster, but ultimately they've got more than enough speed. Let's listen in. Interesting, Dee, to hear Simon Fisher just updating Charlie Enright on the rules about Biotherm going back to shore.
Oh, thank you, Justine Matray. They're letting us know that it was a broken button in the mainsail on Biotherm. I appreciate that. She knows what's going on, and she's on a completely different boat. But it's interesting, it's very easy to get distracted by what somebody else is doing. And I think Sci-Fi then wanted to just address the issue and get everyone's head back onto 11th Hour Racing Team to concentrate on their execution.
I don't think that broken baton was actually Biotherm. I'm looking at the image here of 11th Hour Racing Team, and the top of their sail is flapping, but let's not take my eye for it. Let's go to Mark Towell. He is on the water. He's the CEO of 11th Hour Racing Team. Mark, give us the latest from where you are.
So the action's far from over here. The boats are going 20. Yep.
Oh, probably not the best time to try and get hold of Mark Towell when so much is happening on the water with his team, and it's also happening to everybody else, with Team Malizia almost blown right over to the side. The transition from light winds to strong winds, catching Boris Herrmann off guard here. They were already sailing in big breeze, but the enormous gust ripping across there as the boat came across. As we are having the view on board from inside the cockpit, Will Harris was in cockpit, holding on tight as the boat is buffeting around. Team Malizia in first place right now, 11th Hour Racing Team just behind them in second, and Team Holcim-PRB close behind in third. Team Malizia whipping along now. The top of their foresail just flapping. Look at the attack here from Team Holcim-PRB. Look at the push that Kevin Escoffier has made to the leeward of 11th Hour Racing Team, with the top of their main still flapping here. I mean, Dee, what options does 11th Hour Racing Team have? They can't really go up while that sail is up to replace the batten. There's too much breeze for that, and dropping it would mean stopping.
Well, it is, and the problem we have is the breeze ahead of them is only going to increase, and it's upwind. So they need to decide at what point do they drop their main, change that Baton, because they will have a spare on board, and then rehoist to get back up to speed. They're going to hold it for as long as they can, but they've got to bite the bullet at some point and make that happen, because otherwise the potential for damage of that sail is high, and it's a long way to go. They can't afford it.
Now, the danger of damage to that mainsail, you're absolutely right, Dee, because of course when you break a batten, you produce two sharp edges, two knives inside the sail, and as the sail is flapping around, it could spear its way through, and what could be a small problem with a broken batten could turn into a large tear on the sail. And now we can see 1, 2, and 3 through the gate, the final mark of the inshore section of leg through. It's Team Malizia that is leaving Cape Town in the lead, but just behind and just to leeward, it is Team Holcim-PRB in second place, who have launched themselves from last off the line into second now. 11th Hour Racing Team to windward. They are going to need to plan themselves to solve this problem, as Kevin Escoffier, he hasn't finished yet. He wants to make a move into first. Well, this is going to be an interesting transition here, Dee, because of course they've got their two reefs in the main, they've got their smaller of the head sails, and that was all, well, proved to be absolutely right for that import section of the course. But now our three boats pushing down from Cape Town, and the wide open ocean is waiting for them. Now, what are we expecting here, Dee, with these sailors now that we've gone from that import section into the offshore mode of this leg? Obviously, there's still land in front of them they're going to have to navigate round, but the choices start to open things up.
Indeed, but the course they've got, they're clearing this bit of beautiful Cape Town behind them. As they go round the corner, they're going to be hardening up and they're going to be upwind. And then it's a real big, hard effort to keep tacking into the shore as they round that corner before they start heading south. And it's all about what weather's coming next. But this initial bit round the coast is the same for everyone. Tacking into the beach, lots of manoeuvres, and the breeze is forecast to only increase.
Now, Team Malizia in the lead at the moment, and those light wind patches slow its Boris Herman down as Kevin Escoffier tries to attack to leeward. But that leeward position is going to make it difficult for Team Holcim-PRB, because there's not really going to be the breeze as we are on board now with Malizia. Boris Herman just engaging the autopilot, a little bit of a chance to get on deck and just adjust the sheeting angle of some of the sails. And I think, Dee, that's a pretty good indicator that the different sails are going to start coming out. And indeed, now we can see an unfurl.
And it was Team Malizia that actually changed their sails before as well, with everybody else on those smaller head sails. So they weren't afraid to go that extra effort, put those extra grinding, hard work in to get the sails. So now they're pretty confident this is where they want to be. We'll probably see Team Holcim now copying them, following in suit, changing to the same sails, almost synchronized sailing.
So the J2s are out, the J3s will be furled and put away. A complicated balancing game of the winches inside the cockpit. There aren't really enough winches and pedestals to get these sails in and out without sweating, basically, without working hard. And even Abby Ehler on the bow here, this race being her fourth ocean race, she's working hard to help the furlers. GUYOT Environment Team Europe behind, just going through the departure gate now, the last point of the inshore course. Both foils down right now, and they are riding that nicely. I mean, it's normal to see both foils deployed during the inshore section, where you know the corners will mean you'll switch from one to the other very quickly. I would expect them to start pulling up that windward foil, but right now, riding two of them and riding low and fast seems to be quite the quick move.
Well, the advantage for GUYOT Environment Team Europe here is that they're having the course played out for them ahead by the other boats. They're looking ahead to see what the others had happen to them. They saw them slow down, they saw them go through that transition, they've seen them change their head sails, so they know what's coming and they can anticipate that. These shots now show that now is the time in this light wind where 11th hour racing team have chosen to drop their main, sort that Baton breakage out, and then they can get back into racing. How good a move was that, just when there's no advantage to be lost.
Well, I won't applaud the move just yet until that main is back up, but you are absolutely right that they have been able to find a moment when the other boats are parked up. I wonder whether they knew it was going to happen, and the question is the technical issue on board Biotherm. What is it, and what exactly seems to be their plan? Because right now they are still sailing. We did get confirmation from the race management team that if they did sail back into the harbour, then they would need to stay there for at least 2 hours before restarting, and they were going to have to sail the inshore section again. So maybe they've decided that they can sort the problem on the water, and it's actually not worth abandoning this racetrack. They are still sailing round the race course right now. They're a good way behind, but it seems to be Biotherm still pushing out. A Biotherm in the breeze pushing, but let's see whether 11th hour racing team are going to be able to get that main back up. It is now dropped all the way. I mean, this was the smart play, certainly. The clock was ticking as to how long you can leave a shattered, broken batten in the top of the main that's flapping around before it rips the sail. And if you can see there from the helicopter shot, the main is right the way down. The crew is on deck, and they are pushing hard to try and get the new batten in before they can get it up. And right now, they are not losing out. The teams to windward, Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB, are absolutely parked right now. I mean, Dee, this is smart. I mean, I'm going to hand it to them here. I don't know whether they saw this moment and they planned for it, but this is a smart move.
You happy? I'll do it now. What do you guys think? I want to hear opinions. Everybody has the same amount of information. We can also, we don't have to return the port. We just pick a point and we can have things trimmed out. Okay. I'm okay with that. Happy? Yeah. So let's call, suspend immediately. Tell the shore crew, get it going. Yep, okay. Everybody good with that? Hey, listen, I want to hear from everybody.
Yeah, I think to do that lead, the only thing we could eventually do is, we're going to be reefed most likely, so you can take the bottom ones, but it's not, high risk. Yeah.
We have spares there. Yeah. What's that? Do we have spares on land? Yeah. Yeah? Sure about that?
Just call Lauren.
Yeah, call them and make sure. Because if we don't, then it's stupid. We're just... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Want me to? In the meantime, Juju, can you get the second wingtip? Orange bag on the bottom. It says sail. Yeah. I think they're coming.
So 11th hour racing team, you could just hear Charlie Enright there talking about the plan to suspend racing. Obviously the problem with the top batten, perhaps it has meant a hole in the mainsail and something that they're not able to sort out. So Charlie Enright looks to be getting on the phone. Potentially he is phoning Mark Towle, but let's see if we can get him on the microphone. Mark Towle, I know you're out on the water, and 11th hour racing team talking about suspending racing. Give us your view.
Yeah, guys, what an exciting first hour. Quite a bit going on there. I think we're using this opportunity potentially to try to get the mainsail fixed. There's really big forecast ahead with a really big breeze tonight, a big split in the fleet coming. So maybe in some ways this is an opportunity to see what the fleet does. Hopefully we can get in, get the mainsail fixed, get back on the water and get back to racing.
All right, thank you, Mark. Well, I mean, Dee, we were just saying that this seemed to be quite a clever tactical move, and, well, we'll have to see exactly what drove them to drop the main at that point, but either way, they have managed to discover that certainly the problem was large enough that it needs some time, perhaps, that they don't have. But either way, they're checking ashore to see whether they do have the spares ashore. If they don't, we'll expect them to get the main back up. And as we pan around the fleet there, it's a wonderful opportunity to just check in on the progress of everybody. Team Malizia fully parked up. Team Holcim-PRB also parked up. GUYOT Environment Team Europe, they sailed low. They went lower away from Table Mountain, and right now they are the boat with the most speed.
As always, the boat from behind has the picture laid out ahead of them by the others, and well done them for actually paying attention, looking ahead and getting their cues from everybody else. Everyone's, pardon the pun, in the same boat, but you've got this lull and they've got to get through there somehow. It was really interesting listening to Charlie Enright there on 11th Hour Racing Team, how his leadership style was. He wanted input from the team. He wanted to know that everyone was happy. They wanted to agree on the options that were available to them. The battens are covered. We cover them in sticky tape so that if they shatter, that we don't lose them in the sail. We can pull them out in one piece. But the option was, what were they going to replace it with? And I heard Jack Butel say we could take a batten from lower down because we're going to be reefed, but it's a really high-risk manoeuvre. So they're saying, while they're here in Cape Town, let's fix it so that we can do 12,500 miles and be happy and race properly.
Yeah, as you say, quite the show of leadership out in the water there with Charlie Enright, because it's a big decision to suspend racing.
Do you want to get into, well, no, it's fine. I was going to say, do you want to get into pressure, but it can take fucking 2 hours. Yeah, let's just do it.
It's easy when you are a skipper to ride the highs. The challenge is what you do with the atmosphere on board a boat and with your team when things are low. And right now, Jack Butel just taking off what looks to be the batten end, the adjustable batten end. And you can see the batten just poking out the bottom of the screen, just the bottom left of the screen. The carbon Kevlar weave just poking out. Henry Ross going forward. It's amazing, Dee, that even though with that main all the way down, they still haven't lost anything. Well, we're going to have a little bit of a listen in on as a conversation that was happening with Charlie Enright on his phone just a few moments ago. Let's have a listen in and see if we can hear what their plans are.
Hey mate, be there, it's Charlie. Do we have any more spare C-Tech wingtips? Yeah, we have 2 on board, okay? Do we have any more on land? We're trying to decide whether or not we need to suspend racing so we can get spares for later in the leg. How many? Okay, you know that for sure. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Maybe, we don't know. We have new information. We have to talk about it and decide, okay? It's plausible. Basically, we can fix what broke right now, but we're going to do the leg with a lot of heavy air jiving with no spares, okay? So we're deciding with this new information whether we're going to suspend for 2 hours and take the extra spares, or we're just going to put these 2 in and keep going. So get the 4 ready to go, and we'll tell you what to do.
One of these is going to need grinding.
Okay,
The
thanks.
other one we put on.
And you can get them in a rib and get them on the way out here ASAP, okay? Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye. Thanks, bye.
So Charlie Enright calling to the shore team and describing that they've broken the wing tip, the end of the batten that essentially kind of locks it into the sail and provides the tension. So the batten rod is okay, it's just the wing tip, the bit that kind of provides the tension on the end of the sail is the bit that's broken, and they have some spares, but they're not wanting to dig into those spares before getting into the difficulties of the Southern Ocean. It's incredible to see how little ground 11th Hour Racing Team have lost compared to Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB. It's GUYOT Environment Team Europe, who are out of shot to the right-hand side, who are further away from Table Mountain, who are still in the breeze, are still managing to go, and there is so much drama out in the race course. I'm just going to take half a second to update you about Biotherm, because Biotherm are now going into the harbour, but what they have done is they've decided to complete the inshore section of the course. So they are suspending racing, coming into the harbour. They will have to wait the mandatory 2 hours minimum, but then when they get back out, they can push on all the way down south. So once again for these sailors, no snap decisions. You have to try and weigh everything up and try and make the right move here. Dee, So many things have been going on here in this, just the start of leg 3. But for GUYOT Environment Team Europe, I mean, hopefully they're going to be able to slip past here.
Well, great positioning for them. They're back in the pack. No one's doing anything. And what's interesting is no one's in a rush to do anything. There's a lot of decisions being made on boats that have got critical issues, like Biotherm, an 11th hour racing team. But there's only Holcim-PRB that we've seen shake a reef out. They're now down to 1 reef, and everyone else is still sat with 2 reefs. So there really is no rush for people to think, bigger sails, quick, we've got to get through this light patch. They're almost all taking a breath before they go into what lies ahead next.
The wildlife of Cape Town just out to wave goodbye, if you like, to the fleet as they're heading out. 11th hour racing team in the middle of the pack right now, still with that main down, deciding whether they are going to suspend racing or dig into those spares. And Dee, you mentioned the reef, but movement here on GUYOT Environment Team Europe.
That's right, they've changed headsail and now they've gone full hoist. So they're the ones that were still in just slightly more breeze, closing that gap with the rest of the fleet. So they're hoping that just being that little bit further away from the coastline there, they might get a little slither of pressure ahead of everybody else.
So GUYOT Environment Team Europe setting up for the bigger breeze, well, hoping for more breeze, catching it with a bigger sail. But we've got Mark Towell out in the water to give us the latest with what's going on with 11th hour racing team. Let's hear from him now.
Hey guys, I've just spoken with Charlie. We have officially suspended racing. We have broken 2 wing tips on the mainsail. We actually have 2 spares on board, so we could fix it, but that would leave us no spares for 35 days of racing in the Southern Ocean and a lot of heavy air jibing. So Charlie's elected to suspend racing and get the wingtips, extra spare wingtips on board to be prepared for the long leg. Just looking down the track here, there's really not a lot of pressure for the next little while, so this could work out in our favor, but longer term, big breeze at Camps Bay and 4-meter seas and 30+ knots tonight. So I think this is the prudent thing to do, and let's see how it all plays out.
Mark, thank you so much for the update. If I could just come back to you for another question. What is it that Charlie Enright and your team have to do? We keep saying suspending racing in order to get these spares. Do they have to go in? Do they have to wait for a particular amount of time? What's the instruction been?
Sorry, Niall, you just broke up there. Could you repeat the question quickly?
What if the race management team told 11th hour racing team that you guys need to do for suspending racing? How long do you have to wait? Where do you have to go?
My understanding is that we have to wait 2 hours to resume racing. I believe the plan is for the team to just stay out here on the water. Our shore team's already collecting the extra wingtips, and they're going to bring them out to the team. And we'll just be standing by, take the extra spares on board, and get on with the racing.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. So that is why we're seeing 11th hour racing team setting in to that position there, the position that they will need to essentially restart from when they rejoin the racing in a minimum of 2 hours' time. It's a prudent move, Dee, and while obviously tactically right now they're not losing out too much, the damage is that they could lose out quite a lot, but they're certainly playing the long game.
Definitely. I mean, you have to think this is a leg to Brazil. It's not a leg round Table Bay. So the right decision here. And they can then go into the south with confidence and push the boat hard as if it's, all tickety-boo from the shore team. So this position that they're in now, if you look at how fast the boats are going, 2 hours at that speed is not a lot. Even if they get away in the next 2 hours, it still won't be that far. And we know that there's 40 knots of breeze, big seas, upwind conditions tonight. Then there's actually a decision to make. So 2 hours behind will allow the boats in front to show them what lays ahead, which is almost quite a nice tactical position to be in.
It's an interesting one when you think about it, because in those 2 hours, Team Holcim-PRB, Team Malizia and GUYOT Environment Team Europe off to the leeward side, those 3 boats might not make up much ground in those 2 hours, but then 11th Hour Racing Team still has to restart from this position, so they might not make much ground to stay with them over those 2 hours. So I guess for 11th Hour Racing Team, what you're really hoping for is the breeze to stay very patchy for 2 hours and then to shift so that suddenly there is breeze in this area. So we will cross our fingers as well for Charlie Enright on board 11th Hour Racing Team, as we can see now just how little breeze there is around the racetrack. Still with those reduced main sails on board Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB. 11th Hour Racing Team obviously with their main down, but it's GUYOT Environment Team Europe that seem to be the only boat that's electing to put the full main up.
It's really interesting how there's just no stress or rush for anything. I think it's because they all know what's next. And interesting that this upwind breezy stuff they've got tonight, everybody knows they've got, and it's a traditional departure from Cape Town. But then if we're looking the next day, the next 2 days, the next 3 days, we've got lots of unknowns. There's a big high pressure ridge that they're going to have to choose whether to go along the top of it or cross it and get south into the pressure. So this potential split in the fleet is what everybody wants to know. If one boat goes south, then they're all going to go, because nobody's going to want to get left behind or doing their own thing. So it'll be a pack mentality, but ideally they go south and get into the bigger pressure where they want to sit and ride a low pressure.
I mean, the departure here for leg 3, the inshore section, and then, I mean, it almost opens out in stages, doesn't it? The first one was just getting around this tight course. Then we're talking about leaving Cape Town and getting around the headland. Then it's about lining yourself up into the breeze. At what point do you go fully into that offshore mode? Because right now, like you say, no one seems to be in too much of a rush. Certainly the breeze isn't helping at all, or not putting on the pressure as you've sailed into the lee of Table Mountain. But they're not really going to get a chance to get much sleep in the Southern Ocean. Do you try and grab some, I mean, at this point?
It's almost like they've stopped for a lunch break. Just refueling after those corners they've just turned. And then they're going to the next phase. I think, I mean, there is no real sleep in the first couple of days. It's until you get into that more traditional push of low pressure systems and strong winds and big waves that then you're in that routine and you can settle into that routine, and then you can get that sleeping and eating and resting and sailing routine going. But this is where hopefully we're going to find out a little bit more news about Biotherm and any issues they may have as they're coming into the dock now.
Sam Davies on board Biotherm as Damien Sakan goes forward with the mooring line. Let's hear what Sam has to say.
It's epic. yeah. Frustrating. What happened? We dived, the paddle broke, and so that meant that the boom went further. The paddle on the main sheet broke, which meant the boom went further across, and so the Vang Traveller hit the end stopper and blew up, and all the cars came off, and we lost all the bearings. So we've got to replace all the bearings and especially fix the main sheet paddock. That's the biggest job, because I'm not sure in 2 hours we've got time to laminate or glue, and they'll have to be ingenious about that quickly. But the thing is, it's a 40-day race. 2 hours happening this year. We can stay positive. We're not going to lose much, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen between now and so we just have to stay focused and make sure that we make the best way out of this.
Oh, that's the latest from Sam Davies as Biotherm get into the dock and sort out their problems. I mean, Dee, you've sailed the ocean race with Sam Davies. I mean, you've got to be upbeat about things like this, but it's not really the way you want to start a leg.
Definitely not the way you want to start, but as she said, there's a lot that can happen between leaving Cape Town all the way through the Southern Ocean to Itajaí in Brazil. So yes, they have an issue, but if they can get on top of this and get back out there, anything can happen. And I think that was really nice of yes, we've got this issue, we've identified what it is. There are a few options of how we're going to fix it. We know we're on a 2-hour deadline, but whether we can get it done in that time, but we've got to just kind of move on from there and think about the leg as a whole, big picture.
And the big picture is a lot of miles waiting for them, 12,750 nautical miles through the Southern Ocean, but already the drama has started here in Cape Town. Well, GUYOT Environment Team Europe, and I thought that they were going full mainsail, but they haven't gone full mainsail yet. I mean, help me understand this, Dee. If you're in light winds, if this was the conditions for the race, you'd go full main, you'd go, I mean, masthead code 0, you'd go the biggest sails that you could get, surely. Can we decipher what's going on here?
I would anticipate that if we were on an aerial shot, probably not that too far distant from them, would be a breeze line that's coming round the corner, because the breeze is a south-southeasterly pressure that we've got. And we can see a beautiful shot here of Table Mountain, which actually is protecting them from that south-southeast pressure. So I would guess that there's a line of breeze ahead of them that they're just trying to get into. They're all down to just one reef now, so they're all kind of tempting fate, but not trying to do too much. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go through the effort and the expense of energy of a massive sail change to get into the breeze and then have to do it all in reverse. So it's about managing what's next.
You can see those clouds rolling over the top of Table Mountain being blown by that breeze, and that breeze being launched high up into the air, missing Table Bay and then crashing down several miles to leeward. That's where GUYOT Environment Team Europe are trying to be, to leeward of the rest of the field. Team Holcim-PRB, Team Malizia, both in the shot with 11th Hour Racing Team at the moment with their mainsail down, having suspended racing. Biotherm also suspending racing after having, well, should we say, limped round the inshore section of the course and now having returned to harbour. So for the moment, the boat, I would say, in the lead, GUYOT Environment Team Europe, but certainly closest to the best breeze is this boat here. Robert Stanczyk and Benjamin Dutroux pushing forward. And there, from the helicopter, you can see the line of breeze there, Dee. Absolutely, it's just in front of them. And I guess the thing is that any normal sailor would look at this and think, put the full mains up. But when they get to that breeze, the power's going to come on so quickly, they're not going to have time to reef then. They're just going to be able to hang on as the boat accelerates to perhaps 20, maybe 25 knots. Interesting that the two boats to windward here are on the opposite tack.
That just goes to show the effect of Table Mountain and Lion's Head, that high topography that we have in Cape Town that really affects the shifts and the accelerations that the sailors feel. Literally, you've got to be ready for anything, and they're probably just, you've got to sail in what you see, what you feel, and you've just got to keep your eyes out of the boat. You've got to keep looking at what's coming in, what's next, what the others are doing, because that will be what will be an indicator to what's coming to your boat.
The breeze sailing high over the mountain, swirling back round and putting Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB on the opposite tack to GUYOT Environment Team Europe, who are further down to leeward and arguably in slightly better breeze. The drama here is pretty rich at Cape Town, and leg 3 has barely begun. Team Malizia, Team Holcim-PRB, the breeze in front of them looks very light. I mean, there's almost an argument here, Dee, that you should have come through the departure gate and almost jibed, almost sailed as far downwind as you possibly could and then sailed around. I mean, 11th Hour Racing Team are not doing any of that because they've suspended racing. Their main is down as they wait for more spares to fix the baton ends for their mainsail. Their two head sails filled up at the moment. Frustration for the crew, but they know, you know, I mean, we've all discussed it, it is the right move considering how long and how many miles are laying ahead of them here. But Dee, I'm just winding the clock back in my mind to previous editions of the Ocean Race. Boats have stayed stuck in the light wind zone underneath Table Mountain for quite a few hours. I mean, they do need to try and get out of this.
Absolutely, and the really hard thing is all the spectator boats are with you, so little things like using the bathroom and, you know, just conversations, you feel like you're being watched doing everything, and it's really quite uncomfortable.
Well, just seeing that Jack Boutel on board 11th Hour Racing Team, just standing up having a look at the mainsail. He was the one that we saw taking that end off. And, you know, he's a pretty experienced sailor. You know, Jack Boutel obviously winning the last edition of the ocean race on board Dongfeng Race Team. I mean, an incredibly experienced sailor as well. But interesting, you know, just how strong that lineup is on board 11th Hour Racing Team. I mean, weird to think that on paper you could argue that the skipper Charlie Enright is actually the weakest sailor.
Definitely. I mean, Jack Boutel comes from a Figaro background, and he's done a lot of offshore miles on multi-hulls at very fast speed. And as you say, 2 editions of the ocean race, winning the last edition. Justine Métraux, 2 editions, part of the winning team last edition. Sci-Fi winning it and has done it 5 times. So what Charlie's done has been very sensible. He's surrounded himself with excellent experts, and so he can just lead them and let them do their best, let them be the best they can be.
If you have been here at the start of the leg 3 departure and then you stepped away to make a cup of tea or eat a sandwich or read a book and you've just come back now, it couldn't be more different. The boats were becalmed at the start line, but then straight into 25 knots of breeze and absolutely ripping along. Right now, we have had so many stories unfold in simply, what, an hour and 10 minutes of racing at the beginning of this leg, a leg that will be 35 days. So in that first hour, Biotherm already suspending racing due to a technical problem. They have returned back to shore. 11th Hour Racing Team dropping their main, finding some damage, that they have also suspended racing, and they will have to wait a minimum of 2 hours before they can rejoin. And it is Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB and GUYOT Environment Team Europe right now that are the only 3 boats that are racing, and they can't find the breeze. We can see it, everybody knows where it is, but they simply can't manage to close down the boat lengths to actually get to it. And Team Malizia here, Dee, the fact that Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB are on quote-unquote the wrong tack, certainly not the tack that we'd imagine the breeze be putting them on, somehow they seem to be making some progress.
I was just thinking the same thing. They're moving along quite nicely. Team Malizia's got a little momentum on. Holcim-PRB seem to be hanging on to them. Trying to get an indication from the spectator boats around them what's going on, but it's just about making whatever you're feeling at the time work for you until you get to that dark line that we can see ahead of them. That's what they want to get to, because that's the future. There's Nico Lundgren come on deck.
Yes.
He's like, what's going on? Where's the wind? Let's go find it. So he's having a look to make sure that what he's thinking is happening is actually the reality. There we have a beautiful shot where just at the top of their mainsails there you see that dark line. That's the pressure, that's the real breeze, and that's what they're trying to get into.
And Nico Lundgren has, I mean, he was, if my memory serves me, your navigator in the last edition of the Ocean Race on board Turn the Tide on Plastic. He was also navigator for Mafre when they sailed into Cape Town in 14-15 when they parked up in the light winds. And I think you went past them on Team SCA. Now he's back in that light wind zone. What's he like as a navigator? What's it like to be that person who has to make that ultimate decision? Does he stay calm in these moments?
Nico Lundgren is super calm, super cool. He's a Figaro winner on 2 occasions, so he knows how to be under pressure and make those critical decisions. And he does it in such a calm way. He takes everybody on the journey with him. He paints the picture around so that you know exactly what you're about to experience. So he's now looking, and that breeze that is just ahead of them, Team Malizia's got some nice momentum going in the right direction to that new breeze.
And now GUYOT Environment Team Europe, yes, on the other tack. Now with that breeze swirling around the mountain and filling in from the other side. And a minute ago, you would have said that GUYOT Environment Team Europe had played the tactical game of Table Bay correctly. They were further away from the mountains and arguably in the better breeze. But actually, it hasn't quite rolled out that way. And Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB are making better progress inshore. We still have a number of... well, I was going to say miles, but not really. I mean, meters to go, but it's going to take them a while to do it, to clear this bubble underneath the mountain. But for Robert Stanczyk and Benjamin Dutroux on GUYOT Environment Team Europe, at the moment, not quite working for them right now. Look at this. It's actually moving right now for Team Malizia. They are moving. Boris Herman, his head just poking out of the hatch there, looking around, and they are able to push forward really quite nicely. So Team Malizia just putting the water so flat here. I mean, it's amazing how much breeze we had, what, half an hour ago, 20 minutes ago. For Team Malizia, this boat is not designed for light winds, but somehow they managed to make it work. I wonder whether it's almost the heaviness, the weight just means that momentum just glides it forward. Really nice in extreme light, fantastic in extreme winds, and maybe that will be the only weakness for Team Holcim-PRB. Kevin Escoffier, this is the boat that has been winning the last 2 legs and winning it in absolutely fine form. Also outperforming everybody in the import race here in Cape Town. Just seeing as we're rotating now, Kevin Escoffier out of the leeward hatch. Head out, looking forward. Just waiting to see. So 3 boats out on the water at the moment. 11th Hour Racing Team also out on the water, but their mainsail is down, suspending racing. Meanwhile, back on shore, also suspending racing, is Biotherm. And we can hear now the latest from the crew.
This is the main sheet of the boat. It's fixed here, and we broke the loop with make the link between this and the boat. And so after when it's broke, the main came our way, and all the tracks broke the end of the track, and so we lost all the balls of the track inside. And so we don't have enough in spare bag. So the only solution was to come quickly here, because we don't lose a lot of time if we do that now. So it's not a big issue, but we have to fix it.
So explain to our viewers how much time do you get? How does this work
so
with the committee?
Is we have to spend minimum 2 hours on the dock. So I think we need 2 hours to fix that. So it's not a problem.
And then you'll be back at it.
Yeah, I think the guys are still just in front, so I hope they will still in front.
Yeah, when I left, they were still bobbing around there with no wind. The conditions out there were absolutely insane. Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
Oh yes, these boats are made for more wind than what we had, but not on this kind of course with really short legs, and it's quite dangerous because you can see nothing in front. So yeah, not sure these boats are made to do a show in strong wind like this. Yeah.
But not only that it was strong winds, but that it was changing so much. I mean, at times we weren't moving at all, and at other times it was like blowing more than 20 knots.
Yeah. It was 40. We had 44 or 45 knots at of wind, and sometimes it was 0. So yeah, it's quite hard to say.
Well, Paul giving us an update, and interesting, Dee, to hear him say that it's not really a big problem. And I guess he's right, it's not really a big problem if you can come back to shore. But my word, that would have been a big problem if that had happened a day from now, 2 days from now, or a week from now.
Absolutely. I mean, you pick your spares and you think of all the what-if scenarios and all the potential things that can go wrong, and you try to accommodate that, but you can't carry everything. You expect to have to replace bearings in maybe 1 or 2 cars, but you wouldn't expect to do the whole main sheet track. And as he said, you know, we just don't carry spares for that. But it's interesting, it was the windy jibes that cost both 11th Hour Racing Team and Biotherm there. So the jibe for 11th Hour will have been the mainsail battens flicking across, maybe contacting a runner, and that will have damaged those. And it was the jibe process of the main sheet coming round, breaking there that loop, and then all the cars running off the track. So it's a tough manoeuvre to do, and when you're having to fling it round a corner under pressure and big winds, it's hard.
And also, let's be honest, the potential for people to get injured as well, because that means at the end of the boom there would have been the main sheet with an awful lot of tackle loose and maybe flying free.
That's right. I mean, he had it in his hand there where he said we lost all the bearings from these cars. Well, once those are loose, it's really hard to get it under control. We were saying, why are they not bringing their sails in? And that was exactly why. They had no control on their main. And that's a lot of sail area, a lot of power, and as you say, a lot of hard, heavy stuff that can cause some damage.
Well, meanwhile, out on the water as Biotherm are getting themselves repaired to rejoin racing, Team Malizia is absolutely finding the best way through this light wind bubble. I would never have predicted that this tight inshore course, close to the coast, close to the mountain, would have worked, but Nico Lundgren seems to understand Table Bay extremely well for this edition of the Ocean Race. Behind him, it's Team Holcim-PRB, pushing down in second place, with GUYOT Environment Team Europe now in the third. And look at this, I mean, Kevin Escoffier is also moving as well. GUYOT Environment Team Europe, the boat that on paper is in the best position, has got the weakest of the breeze.
I think we're hoping that that breeze will funnel down to them as well, but you can just see it's so patchy on the water there. You're just looking to join up those dark patches that are just those little accelerations of breeze together. But I would definitely think that GUYOT Environment Team Europe should be doing better than they are right now.
It is almost a little bit unfair for GUYOT Environment Team Europe, and I think that's them, isn't it, on the left-hand side, top left-hand side of the picture, just waiting there for the breeze that is propelling Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB, but I don't think it's going to come to them. I think GUYOT Environment Team Europe are downwind of Table Mountain, but not enough. So as the wind comes over the mountain and swirls back, and you get that loop of breeze on the leeward side of the mountain, that swirl is hitting Team Holcim-PRB, but it's not really enough for GUYOT Environment Team Europe. Kevin Escoffier helming Team Holcim-PRB, and this means that we're going to be leaving Cape Town, and Kevin Escoffier is going to be in second place starting leg 3. And let's not forget here, Dee, I mean, Kevin Escoffier, he has won the Ocean Race before. He hasn't won the Ocean Race as skipper, but he's doing everything right to do that.
Well, he's definitely learned from the last 2 editions that he's done and the win that he's got under his belt. Don't forget, Abby Ayler's on her 4th time doing the Ocean Race. So she's got a lot of experience leaving Cape Town, the right ways, the wrong ways, and everything in between. So she will have been given her opinion as well. And there's some really good sailors on this boat. But it's all about the transition that comes next. How they react to the transition of the stronger breeze that's coming will be critical.
Kevin Escoffier having a look at the breeze ahead, but behind its 11th hour racing team, and it looks like the Shore team have made their way now to 11th hour racing team and are getting the extra repairs, the extra spares, on board. Certainly sorting out the extra pieces of equipment that they need. And they're not in too much of a rush because, of course, they have to wait for that minimum 2 hours before they can rejoin the race. GUYOT Environment Team Europe. There's the breeze there, it's just to the right-hand side, but it's just not enough to push this boat forward. Look at the 2 Imokas in the distance. Team Holcim-PRB and Team Malizia out in front of GUYOT Environment Team Europe. There's an enormous patch of light winds right where Robert Stanczyk and Benjamin Dutroux are. And it's not the same story for Team Holcim-PRB and Team Malizia, who look set. I mean, if anything, I would say their speed has been increasing.
It is, especially now we've got a really nice graphic that can show that difference in speed. Barely a knot of boat speed from GUYOT Environment Team Europe, but we've got building pressure, we've got building boat speed from these 2 boats in the lead, Team Malizia and Team Holcim-PRB. Building that pressure, building that boat speed, and how they transition as they get into the stronger breeze and then start their upwind process to the south will be really interesting. You can see the white horses ahead in the sun, so it isn't going to be far away.
I wonder what it's going to do in terms of the tack that they're going to be on. When they get to that breeze, is it going to be a jibe, or is the breeze fully swirled round enough that actually it's going to hold them onto this jibe, this tack going out that way? Right now, these two boats enjoying the best of the breeze, certainly sailing along nicely, and Team Malizia in the lead as the fleet depart Cape Town with the spectators and with the other boats around to wave them goodbye. Boris Herman is starting leg 3 well, and it is a leg that should play to the features of this boat here. Boris Herman in the lead as the first boats leave Cape Town at the start of leg 3. And what an incredible opening section it was for the start of this race. It was Biotherm, the only boat that managed to actually cross the line as the gun fired. The other 4 being left to die in the breeze as Biotherm absolutely roared away on that top reach. The breeze had to be hard fought, and Team Holcim-PRB had to wait their turn, while Team Malizia, GUYOT Environment, Team Europe and 11th Hour Racing Team all joined each other in a battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th on that top reach. The speeds today touching 30 knots around the racetrack, but plenty of place changes too, with Team Holcim-PRB managing to find their way around the leaders, and Biotherm slipping further and further back in the field. The breeze out on the racetrack causing problems for all the sailors trying to manage and control their boats around the racetrack, as well, of course, as problems with equipment. This leg, this moment, just the opening stages to what will be 12,000 nautical miles in a race from Cape Town to Brazil, and the sailors having to start with a lot of sweat and a lot of calories burnt. Team Holcim-PRB working very hard with 11th Hour Racing Team as the fleet were closing out the last stages of this import section, riding the breeze just clear of Table Bay before sailing out through the departure gate and waiting in that light wind area. That was where 11th Hour Racing Team decided to drop their main and ultimately suspend racing as Team Holcim-PRB and Team Malizia changed sails, tried to find the best configurations of the sails they could put up in the air to get the best breeze. This was how the teams drifted, where 11th Hour Racing Team radioed into the race committee and Biotherm came into shore to try and repair their track. Well, now Biotherm still ashore, still repairing, and I will be impressed if they can get that track and the strops reattached within the minimum 2 hours, so we could see that repair taking a little bit longer. Team Malizia right now, as Rosalind Kuiper goes forward onto the bow, just getting what seems to be other sails ready. Team Malizia in the lead and Team Holcim-PRB just behind, with GUYOT Environment, Team Europe a long way back in 3rd. So Team Malizia in the lead at the moment, pushing through in the light winds of Table Bay. Team Holcim-PRB just behind. And just remember, these are the opening stages. These are the first steps of leg 3. From here, these boats are going to push down into the Southern Ocean, an area of the world that these sailors know only too well, and they know its formidable reputation.